me and Fernanda, and then during the staff update, we have Brian Edwards from the libraries. And he's also going to be providing a staff update as well.
Oh, nice. Okay. I think that's
Yeah, that's
great. I need to look through. I don't know if this is yours or that's yours. So are you ready to go?
Yes. The first year.
I will call the April 11th meeting to order. It's good to see all of you. I know it's been a while. So after 7 months, we're all here together, except Juan was the only one, I guess. Is he Zooming or anything? Do you know, Spencer?
He is. He said he's not able to attend this meeting.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Well, why don't we, I think we can go ahead and maybe do the roll call with that.
Yeah, could you use your mic as well? Or turn that one on.
Sorry. You
think
know, I
just-
was going to turn on. I was afraid I turned it on too soon. There we go. Sorry about that.
Okay,
Okay.
I will call roll here. Chair Column,
Present.
Vice Chair Rath,
Here.
Commissioner Barlow,
Here.
Commissioner Dawson,
Here.
Commissioner O'Neill,
Here.
Commissioner Rodriguez is absent, and Commissioner Smith Carvello.
Here.
Okay, great. And maybe introduce the staff too.
Staff present today are Principal Planner Roveri, Planning Manager Hill, and myself, Recording Secretary Argenbright. To provide information on participating in this meeting and providing public comment, including remotely by Zoom or by telephone, is on this meeting's agenda, which is online at isearchmonterey.org. Remote commenters will be muted until it is their turn to speak, and a timer will be shown on the screen. If you are connected on Zoom, the timer is accurate with no delay. In the chamber, we recommend keeping phones and devices muted to prevent audio interference with the meeting. Thank you for participating in your city government.
Okay. And let's see, I think the next step is to open the consent agenda and look at our minutes from September 14th. Did everyone have a chance to look at those? Are there questions, comments? Nothing. Okay, then why don't we go ahead and vote? All those in favor of the minutes?
Sorry, could we
Whoop.
just check if we have anyone online that would like to make a
Oh,
comment?
I'm sorry. I was, yes, could you check that?
There are no attendees with their hands raised,
Okay,
but we could also, do we need a motion? Okay,
yeah. Yes,
I move that we accept the minutes for September 14th.
okay,
second.
great. All right, so Carol O'Neill, motion to accept them, and Geraldine Crivello seconded it. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposition? Nope. Okay, then stands done. All right, so the next item, let's see, we did about the public, yes, and any public comments for items that are not on the agenda?
again, there are no attendees with their hands raised.
Okay, very good. So why don't we go on to the first, well, maybe the only public appearance. And I think Fernanda, this is your baby, right?
Thank you, Chair.
Certainly.
I'm gonna pull up the agenda report. So thank you, Chair and Commission. My name is Fernanda Roveri. I'm the principal planner.
Is your mic on?
Okay. Okay, so thank you, Chair and Commission. My name is Fernanda Roveri. I'm the Principal Planner for the City of Monterey. And today I'd like to present to you the Certified Local Government Annual Report. As you know, we are a certified local government, which means that we are committed to historic preservation and we are recognized by the National Park Service and the California Historic Preservation Officer as a city that, again, is committed to historic preservation in the way that our Historic Preservation Commission meets regularly. We have a local register of historic properties. We have a Mills Act program. Um, we have a formal historic designation process. We have 2 nationally recognized historic districts. And we have a lot of our neighborhoods have been surveyed by architectural historians for historic properties. And so because of all those things, the state, we are eligible to apply for grants for historic preservation, such as, for example, the last one we received was for the Alta Mesa Reconnaissance and Historic Statement for the Alta Mesa neighborhood. So those grants, they help us, stay up to date with our historic properties and making sure that we survey all of our city and maintain those properties that are significant to our local history. And so this is the annual report that I prepared for you today. It is due April 26th to the state. And I just wanted to highlight a few sections of it. First of all, the report is not a calendar year report. It is an October 1st, 2022 through September 30th, 2023 report. So it can get a little confusing because during this time we had 8 commissioners. We had Commissioner Lori Hambaro, who left the HPC on July 1st, 2023. And then Commissioner Julie Barlow joined us last year. And so here, for example, the state wants to know how many properties we have added to our local register. And during that reporting period, the only one that we added was 828 Pacific Street. And that was given a H2 City Historic Resource zoning on February 7th, 2023. That's the date that the City Council approves that zoning change. And then it was recorded as a Mills Act property with the county recorder on September 19th, 2023. The next thing I'd like to point out is our attendance record. And so in order to maintain our CLG status, the HPC has to meet 4 times a year. And we met, but well, by year, they mean their reporting period. So October to September. We met a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times during that period. And all of you attended at least 4 of those meetings, except for Commissioner Barlow because she joined last year. So she only attended the September meeting of last year. And then next is the training that you all received. I did my best to record all of the training that you emailed me and provided to me. But if I'm missing anything, let me know. Again, this report is due April 26th, so I still have a little bit of time to modify it and add more training. And so I just listed the commissioner name, training name, number of hours, the training provider, and the dates. You're only required to do one training,
Oh,
but it's obviously better to have more than just one, because of the breadth of how interdisciplinary historic preservation can be. And so here we have multiple trainings attended by Commissioner Smith Crivello and Column. We have Commissioner Dawson, Commissioner Hambaro, who attended trainings before she left the HPC. Commissioner O'Neill, Commissioner Rath, and Commissioner Rodriguez. And then Commissioner Barlow did point out to me that she completed the public service ethics education training. So that counted toward her training requirement. And I attended the Home Safe Home series, which some of you also did. And I also added, for the rest of the commissioners, the MILSAC inspections report and handout presentation and discussion that Associate Planner Buggert presented, because that was a good overview of our MILSAC program, and then also included the training I gave for land use regulations for properties without historic zoning, because you were all present for that.
Right. I noticed that.
And then again, this is information that the National Park Service likes to receive. They wanted to know what properties we added to our local register. And again, it's 828 Pacific Street was the only one. And also received the Mills Act, which brings our total for this reporting period, it brings our total count of Mills Act properties to 61. And there's been, since September 30th of 2023, we have added 3 more properties to the Mills Act program, but I'm not allowed to report them for this report, but they will be added to the next reporting period. And we are required to attach all resumes and statement of qualifications from all commissioners. So that's attached to the staff report, and also the minutes from the meetings, those 8 meetings that we had during the reporting period. And with that, that concludes my presentation. And if you have any questions or additions, please let me know.
Yes, commissioners, do any of you have a question or a comment? Yes, Commissioner O'Neill.
Moving forward, we've had very few meetings this year, and it's already April. Are we going to be able to get 4 meetings in by the end of the year?
We are planning on bringing back to you another MILSAC inspections report, so that will require another meeting. And then we do have a project where they want to do an addition to a historic property, so that will require your review. So I believe that we will be meeting, we will be meeting those minimum 4 times.
And that's for the whole commission, because I know there's one meeting I won't be able to attend. And if that's the only meeting we have between now and September, does that affect me, or does that affect the whole city, or how does that?
If you're absent just for that meeting, that's fine. We're just required as a commission to meet 4 times.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, good. Then it's on you.
Okay. Yes, Commissioner Crivello.
On the attendance, I remember being here for Kathy's first meeting. Was that?
That was September, yes.
And I noticed I'm not acknowledged in September. But I don't remember, going back, to all of them. But because it was Kathy's first meeting, I believe I attended that meeting.
Was that in the
The
minutes?
September 2023.
I don't
meeting?
know.
Just this last September. Was
Okay,
that your first meeting?
The
you were
minutes.
there.
And I was there.
show that.
okay.
So we got two people that remember me there. Kathy? you
Oh,
remember me at
yes,
that
I
meeting?
did, actually, I did circle that too, Geraldine. Now that I see this, yes, you were definitely here.
Good, that's good. 'cause
Well, you're
it's-
noted in the minutes as being present.
That's
another-
right.
Oh.
I
another-
remember seeing
Thanks.
all of us being present in the minutes. I did see that, but I'm just looking at that chart on page 15, and I did circle the square next to your name in September. So good point.
I think there's a
Okay.
lot to keep track of with these reports, and I appreciate the work that you put
Mhm.
into it to try to capture the trainings. It's very difficult when it's so long
Oh,
ago, to
yeah.
remember the trainings. And I guess that the answer is for us to try to,
Mm-hmm.
keep an ongoing list of it and try to stay abreast of it. But thank you for all of your work on it, Fernanda, and staff, Levi too.
Mhm.
Yeah, we will make that change.
Yeah, see how I have it circled right there. Yeah. Okay, any other comments from anyone? All right, thank you. Let's see, now I'm kind of caught off guard here. Informational reports and staff comments.
So I think we should
Is-
we can go ahead and open it up for public comment on the CLG report, even though we're not necessarily adopting a resolution. We can still
Oh,
open it up if it
okay.
is a public appearance item.
All right. Could you help word that for me, Levi? Which, what?
Sure.
Public
You just
Oh,
ask,
public
yeah, we
comment,
can just see if
yeah.
there's any members of the public
Yes,
in attendance or
okay.
online.
Spencer, do we have any public comments or anything?
There are no attendees with their hands raised.
Okay, all right, thanks for reminding me about that. Okay, I do see that here. Then can we, well, I did ask for commissioner comments. I thought I did, yes. I said, are there any comments?
Sorry, I have.
Yeah, all right, yes, Commissioner Dawson.
I attended the virtual seminar, a refresh look at Secretary of the Interior.
Could you
standards.
turn your microphone?
It's been so long since we've had a meeting.
I know, I know, I didn't have mine on. either.
Anyway, it was offered by the California Preservation Commission and or what is it? Foundation, anyway, a refreshed look at Secretary of the Interior standards. And it was I think it was a 4-hour seminar, and they discussed just a basic overview of the SOI standards, understanding the standards as guidance, and then a very interesting part at the end about applying the standards to Adobe structures. Anyway, it was a very informative seminar, and I think I was the only one from the commission who was able to attend, but it was very valuable.
That's on, you can stream it now, I
Okay,
believe,
that's good.
because I have
That's good.
that, a note to myself
Yeah,
to do that.
I saw that one. I remember the Adobe.
yeah, that was
application.
good.
That was interesting.
Yeah, that was, I
Anyway,
never
thanks to
saw that
staff for that.
together, yeah.
Yes, I will note that that you attended that for the next reporting
Okay.
period.
Did you report that too, that you saw that?
Doesn't matter.
I,
That's
okay, all right,
And
we're all right. We,
Commissioner Dawson, is
Won't
that
be
the SOI 360, the most recent training that
Right,
went out?
yeah, it was on February 29th.
Okay, yeah, and I'll just
Yes.
mention to the other commissioners, as staff, we actually had staff attend that as well. So we actually have those materials. So if any of you are interested in that, we can provide those. Sounds like they're also available for streaming as well, but if you have any technical difficulties with that, we did take the materials from that presentation and have that available as well. And if you get those materials and you go through the training, that will also count towards next year's report as well.
I have a,
okay,
if you
yes.
were to feel like that would be a good training to review, how would we go about accessing it?
Sure. It sounds like it's available for streaming on the California Preservation Foundation website, but also you can reach out to Fernanda or myself and we can provide you with the materials. So when I say materials, it's like the PowerPoint presentation that they provided. And I believe we have a recording of the actual session as well. So it would capture.
Would we come here to a computer at the city or would it be sent to us?
Typically, we would send it over and then you could watch it
home?
at your own leisure.
Thank you. That's very nice to have that opportunity to do that.
Mhm. Definitely. Any other comments from anyone? Okay. So I think we should probably move on to the planning office update.
Sure.
Would that be appropriate now, Levi?
I think so. So as you see in the noted in the staff report, we did provide a planning office update. Currently, there's no items scheduled for the May 9th HPC meeting, but as you know, that's almost a month away. So that could change between now and then. So we will definitely let you know if that does change.
Okay.
We did want to provide an update. So as some of you may have been following, there was our Mills Act program in the city per direction of the city manager. After, as Fernanda mentioned, we have over 60 Mills Act properties since the Mills Act program was started in the early 2000s. And so it's been some time since that program was created, and the city manager saw that this would be an appropriate time to do a deeper analysis on the program, where its successes and where it can be improved upon. And so we brought forward to City Council an item in which basically a suspension of the program while we had that analysis done. So what that analysis contains is a kind of a wide range fiscal analysis of the fiscal implications of the program, both on the city and kind of takes a look from across the board with the properties, and kind of applies some numerical metrics to the program so they can better understand how well it's working and how it can be improved upon. The other aspect that it kind of will analyze is the equity analysis. So that's kind of a look at who is applying for Mills Act properties and how we're seeing this tool or program be used after it's applied to properties, which is a pretty interesting topic to take a look at. So we have begun this analysis. We're using a consultant to prepare this, and we expect the results of that to be ready by the end of the summer, so probably end of July. And we'll be bringing that back to this commission to basically present the results of the study and then to give recommendations to council. And then ultimately it'll be presented to council, and then they will decide on whether or not the Mills Act program needs to be adjusted in any way. And yeah, more information on that to come. But yeah, I guess I can take any questions that you may have about that.
Yes, I don't know who raised their hand first. Geraldine wanted to go ahead.
Well, the first I learned of a suspension in our ability to have meetings and talk about Mills Act was actually in the paper, and it was in the weekly, and I was concerned that we didn't have some information that would go out to us as commission members that would let us know that that was in the works, so that perhaps we could have presented at city council or shared our perspective on it. I also live across the street from Helen property. It's over 100 years old, and she just bought it during the last couple of years, and I encouraged her to think about Mills Act. She said the cost of it's gone up twice as much as it was. And we also weren't informed at the fact that it's gone up. It's a hardship for her, and that's the reason she's not doing it. So I tend to be a person that thinks that that we didn't have adequate communication about all of this that was in the works, and to read about it first in the paper or to hear about it from a community member made me feel not prepared. And I did take part in a meeting with Kim Cole last week just to express that I thought that we should have had a little bit of background and preparation and and um and we should have an opportunity to share our thoughts. All the commission members should, because some of us have been on the commission for a number of years now. And especially Carol, I don't know if she can pull a number out of her hat, but she's been on a long time. I would be the next senior member. And I feel that for the city not to even share this with us or ask what we thought, it just didn't seem like it was handled in a way that would have made us feel like our presence here is appreciated I'm concerned about that.
Yes, and we appreciate that. And yeah, it could have, in hindsight, probably could have been communicated better. But yes, we definitely do value the input from the commission as it pertains to this matter. And that's exactly why we're going to be bringing the study back to this commission for feedback and recommendations before taking it forward to council. Just to touch briefly on the fees topic, I think that's a conversation will be much more informed once we have the fiscal analysis done. So we have a better understanding of what basically the fiscal impact for these property owners are. So we'll be able to have a lot better understanding of if the tax reductions are offset by those fees and vice versa. So we look
Wait.
forward to that.
Tax deductions are offset by those fees? Which fees?
The tax savings that come from the Mills Act program and how it compares with the fees of the program.
Well, so you're speaking of the time that the staff uses to work on the program, or are you speaking of the fee the property owner has to pay to apply for the program or to hire a consultant? Which fees?
So those are the same. So the fees that we collect are for cost recovery of the staff time that it goes into processing the application.
And has that always been a consideration for any application? I mean, is that normal that every bit of time has to be covered by the
That is
payment of the citizens that are already paying taxes here?
That is standard that most of our application, the review fees are set up to recover costs. That is correct.
It hasn't been shared with us in the past, Levi. In your time here, maybe you don't know, but we haven't always had that in front of us.
That's precisely why the fee was changed. So it was not recovering the costs that it took to process Mills Act applications. So for every Mills Act application the city was processing, the city was in fact losing money just in the staff time and resources it took to process those applications. So the fee increase was set up to recover more of those costs.
My thought is that, those of us who've been here a while pay taxes and contribute time, that not everything that happens is in a cost recovery. And that this is something new for Mills Act to be in this state. We don't get a report saying the staff spent this much time on it, therefore it costs this much, therefore the cost. We haven't seen that.
So that's covered during whenever the council adopts the master fee schedule each year. So all that conversation happens at city council, and that is what goes into that conversation. They look specifically at the time, staff time and resources that it takes to process the applications, and then they assess the fee that we're collecting for those applications. Again, most of the projects we do not get to full cost recovery. It just moves us a little bit closer.
Is that done every year?
That is.
And we haven't ever heard about it.
It's a
as it connects
citywide
with
master
Mills Act
fee
fees.
schedule. So it happens at city council.
And so it's part of every year, that like that one Mills Act would be the one that there would be cost recovery for. That
So they look at all the fees across the board for
I'm talking
everything the city
about
does.
our commission. I can't speak about all of these, but when you're talking about that in your speech that you just gave, you're saying that you're recovering the time it took for the one Mills Act. And that's why the cost has gone up from 2,000 to 4,000. We only had one Mills Act, so it couldn't have had that much impact.
It's
this
per
last year.
application, you're correct.
So because of that application, we've doubled the cost of it for people applying. Am I understanding it right?
No, so when they assessed the fee for the new application fee, what they did is they looked at the time spent across the board, averaging out for a Mills Act contract. So when they look at all the Mills Act contracts that staff has processed, they look at the amount of time that goes into it, and then they assess the fee based off of that.
So
There's no
you said
single
there's one
contract that-
Mills Act.
I'm sorry, what?
One Mills Act. We have one this year.
I don't
The-
think that's
the
accurate.
Pacific
The
Street.
reporting period that I just presented, we had one
Right,
Mills
yeah,
Act
Pacific
application.
Street.
Yeah.
But we've had multiple since I've been working here. So again, the reporting year is different than the calendar year. So, but yeah, it looks beyond just a single year. They look at the fees. I mean, as we've explained, a Mills Act contract goes to this hearing, which requires a staff report to be prepared and a hearing. If it also involves a rezoning, which they typically do, there's a planning commission hearing that's also involved. So that's another staff report that's
I
prepared,
understand.
another hearing. And then they go to council for 2 readings. So it's a total of 3 to 4 hearings for each one of these applications. So it's a considerable amount of staff time and probably more than what most of our applications require.
Well, thank you for answering some of the questions.
Sure.
Any other questions or comments? Yes, Commissioner Dawson.
So all the Mills Act contracts are suspended until this report is done at the end of the summer?
No, so none of our active contracts are affected at all. So this is just for new contracts. So basically it's a suspension of accepting applications for new Mills Act properties. The existing 60+ properties are not impacted at all. Those are contracts, so we can't really mess with those.
So, but no new Mills
No
Act.
new ones, yeah.
That's what she meant. First, there was in the fall, first, we were just going to look at it and there was some concern for a meeting or two, but then it was held over or extended for a year. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So there's a year without, and so if somebody from the public wanted to apply for Mills Act, your office would tell them that, I'm sorry, but we're not accepting Mills Act until
Till the
when?
study has been concluded and the council has lifted the suspension.
Which is expected to be,
We expect the study to be completed at the end of the summer, so most likely around the end of July, early August, and then we'll bring it to this commission and then to city council.
so that's a long time. We've never experienced anything like this and we didn't know
Well,
anything.
it's that moratorium. Commissioner Barlow, did you have a comment?
Thank you.
Mhm.
Yeah, Levi, I was wondering if you could describe a little bit about the equity analysis that you're looking at and how that relates to the fiscal kind of picture.
Sure. And that's, so this to provide a more complete picture to council on how this program is working. So obviously the Mills Act program is established to provide tax relief for what is considered maybe excessive or more or higher maintenance costs associated with owning a historic property. So as we've seen different patterns kind of developing, or I shouldn't say we've seen them. There's thoughts that there's different patterns developing and how that program is used, because that contract, once it's applied to the property, it stays with that property in perpetuity. It auto renews every year for a 10-year contract. So essentially in perpetuity with that property. So it's not held to that owner. So as we see property prices increase, and as we see these contracts be applied to properties and then perhaps placed for sale, we're trying to better understand how this program is being used and possibly as a sales tool when it comes to real estate speculation, and how that impacts perhaps some of our lower income communities that are not maybe getting the relief from this program that maybe we'd like to see. So all that's kind of a question mark right now, and we're looking forward to the results of the study to better understand that, both in terms of the fiscal analysis as it impacts the city from a revenue standpoint, obviously lost tax revenue, and how it's impacting also the residents of the community.
Okay. Just to follow up, as part of the lost revenue through Mills Act contracts, I'm sure you're probably looking at this through a, duration, like a 5-year or 10-year duration, are you also, just to compare apples to apples, looking at the sales of homes that are happening and how that's, being compared to the overall coffers of the city?
Correct, yes. So it looks at it across the board and how it compares with non-historic properties and
Okay.
how it's impacting the historic
makes sense.
properties.
Mhm. Yes, Commissioner
I
Gravello.
don't think Mills Act is particularly, when you said it, how it affects lower income residents, Mills Act isn't specifically affecting lower income residents. What it's directed to do is if you have a historic house, it's to help the person with the house manage all the upkeep of an older building and to provide an incentive for maintaining and caring for the older buildings because it's an asset to the city of Monterey. And no matter your income level, we all enjoy the fact that we have historic buildings in Monterey. It adds to the beauty of it and it adds to the general historic atmosphere. It represents Monterey. So that's the part that's available for all of us. Now, I did come to the city and I asked how many properties were you seeing that might have been doing this and reselling the property? And I was given one. One might have bought 2 or possibly 3 and might have possibly been interested in reselling these properties. And so I would be interested in, if it's just one, why this is a big thing, or if we were connected to a concern in Carmel that was happening about the same time. And the other thing is, what about our, that I'm concerned about people that are trying to maintain these properties and do we want to have a cap on it? Do we want to have which properties are, to me, it just came as a big shock when I was encouraged someone who purchased a property for 800,000. We're not talking about millions of dollars here. We're talking about she would like to apply for a Mills Act, but the cost of the application was a deterrent. So I'm interested in the effect of that it would have it deterring possible people that would want to care for their property also in the mix. The other is, during the tenure I've had on the board, it seems to me the real developers don't want Mills Act and they don't want their properties to have a lot of new rules. They'd rather have the flexibility and freedom to build new properties or use a property without all the strings attached. So I've seen a lot more people wanting to remove the historic assignment so they could have more flexibility than looking for the historic assignment on their property and seeing the advantage. There may be a few, but I don't think that's our biggest problem. I think we as a community should continue to support programs that help us identify and maintain historic resources for us. And these properties for all of us are historic. I don't own one, but I enjoy the fact that I live in a city that cares for them. So I just really appreciate the opportunity to share my opinion because we didn't have an opportunity in the fall when this all came down.
That's true. Yes. Anyone else? Yes, Carol.
One of my big concerns is we've had a few, or not very many, but a few people who have gotten a Mills Act contract and then they enjoy the tax advantage and they don't do any work on the house. And as I understand it, there's no penalty, I mean, other than pulling the Mills Act contract, which is a $250,000 fine that the city is very reluctant to do. Are you also looking at intermediate penalties for people who don't do the maintenance that they're supposed to?
Yeah, so the particular study that we're talking about won't actually look into enforcement, that aspect of the program, but you make an excellent point. So currently the way the program's structured is enforcement is through either notices of non-renewal where we phase out the contract over the life of 10 years, or you can cancel, we can enter into a cancellation process. You're right, both of those are pretty, specifically the cancellation is a pretty severe penalty. I think that's something we can maybe look at. I think my expectation is the results of the study will be provided, will come to before this commission, likely with feedback, recommendations on how possibly the program can be restructured or changed to better reach the goals of the city and of the program. And then ultimately council will act in the same way and possibly make changes, and that can include further enforcement.
All right, thank you, Levi. Anything else on this? I know we have a guest
Yeah.
here that we'd like to introduce, and
Yeah, so I'll go a little bit out of order. So we do also have on here noted upcoming historical and cultural events. There's
Right.
quite a few over the next this month, so I won't read them all, but they're all noted in that update, and a lot of very interesting events. But yeah, going back to our guest speaker, we do have Brian Edwards with our Libraries and Museum, and he's going to provide a quick update on the expanded path of history. I will note that this is a kind of an informational presentation, as this is not an agendized item. You're allowed to voice general comments, but I will have to ask that we try to refrain from too much conversation and back and forth. And if you'd like for that to happen, we can always come back and agendize this item for a future meeting for more conversation.
welcome, Brian. I think most of us know you. We're happy to have you here.
Thank you, Chair Cullum.
You're quite welcome.
Nice to be here. Thank you, Commissioners. I'm Brian Edwards. I am let's see if it'll work. I'm the Library and Museums Director here for the City of Monterey. With that, actually, Spencer, can I pass this off to you real quick? Perfect. Okay, Fernanda, can you go to the next slide? We'll see if this works real quick. So starting off, I just want to go real quick. Our founders of the Path of History. I hope folks are familiar with the Path of History, but I also wanted folks online, anybody watching, to be aware. We have there Colonel Roger Fitch from Monterey History and Art Association, Laura Bride Powers, who is a historian over at the Customs House. And anybody know who's there on the right? That's our architect here from the Few Memorial Building that we're standing in right now. This is William Rigel. William Rigel also worked on the Pebble Beach company. And so I'll talk a little bit about the history, but you'll notice on the 17 Mile Drive, there was the painted line that's still around there. And so William Rigel was instrumental actually in the early stages of the Path of History. You can go to the next slide real quick. What's that? There you go. So just real quick, just want to go over just for folks, it's actually, some of this was based on the map, 1849 Narvaez map of the old plaza area of Monterey, and 1938 Path of History map. That's the original map. Next slide. But it started in 1938 as a driving tour. 1987, it turned into a walking tour with blue tiles, which were quickly changed. In 2024, here we are, expanded Path of History. We're looking at some more. Next slide. But real quick, just wanted to give you guys a rundown. So there was actually a city beautification committee back in 1930 that was looking at ways to highlight Monterey history. And Laura Bride Powers identified 35 initial sites and presented those to Colonel Roger Fitch from Monterey History and Art Museum, or Monterey History and Art Association. And 1932, there were the first 16 metal signs were ordered. Those are those signs that are outside, are the shape of Colton Hall. You'll still see some of them around the city. There was making by Payne and Mahoney in Oakland. And then in 1938, the Fitch, what they called the Fitch Traffic Plan, was approved by City Council, which 2.8 miles of orange and red painted line going a single path around the city. There was Chamber of Commerce printed 25,000 maps, and then we had the visible signs around. So the California Automobile Association approved those metal signs for it. So it was really a new concept at that time. Next slide. Then you go into 1946. By that time, there's 54 sites. 1960s path was reduced to 46. And then there wasn't much change on this, kind of like up and down, until 1984. California Parks and Recreation, at that point, started putting in some interpretive signs, some painted signs that highlighted their California park sites. And then 1987, you'll see the walking tour began. That's when they put on the blue dots. And I'll show you examples of the Diane Swift tiles. So we had some tiles that were added in 1989. You will still see those around in the buildings, in front of buildings around town. In 1993, we had some gilded tiles. In 1999, we had our tiles in the 7 languages, because sometimes I forget. I know we've got English, French, Spanish, German, Italian, Chinese, Japanese. That's our 7 language. Next slide. So there was a Preserve America grant back in 2005. That's where the on-sale tours were created. By 2007, there was 44 sites listed. So I mentioned the number of sites because it's gone up and down over time, over years. It has not been static since the 1930s. And then 2022, there was a grant from the Community Foundation of Monterey County for expanding path of history to look at underrepresented populations here in Monterey. 2023, we created a digital app to highlight Monterey history and sites. And then 2024, 23 and 24, worked with Museum Commission on expanding path of history with Page and Turnbull as our consultant. Next slide. So with this, there are suggested additions on the current path as well. And these are 18 sites that were done in a draft back around 2020 as well. So you will see these on there. I could provide Fernanda and Levi a full copy of the report. It's like 120 pages, so I didn't print a copy for everybody right now. But these are, if you can go through, there's like the Carnegie Library in Van Buren, the Semino House. Next slide, if you can. And some of these others, Hank Ketchum Studio right next to us, Monterey Post Office, also also architect William Rajul on that as well. So one of the things to keep in mind on this really is that the path of history, when it was designed in 1932, around that time, 1930, 32 to 38, they did not include a lot of, there was nothing regarding post-war. There was nothing regarding like the canning industry. There was nothing regarding a lot of these other areas because that was current. That was not the history of that time. The path of history really focused on Spanish, Mexican, early California history. So next slide. These are the metal signs that I mentioned. These are still around town. Many of them are missing. They're originally put in by Monterey History and Art alongside City of Monterey. But as sidewalks happen and ADA happens, it's hard to have street posts sitting in the middle of a sidewalk. So over time, you'll see many of these have been missing all around town. Next slide. And this on the top left, that sign hangs in my office right now. That's actually, I saw that in a cover of a Monterey Peninsula Herald article in the 1970s. So I believe it was probably used as a street sign for a short period of time, but I found it in the sign shop and I asked to borrow it. So is there, the Diane Swift tiles are on the top right. You will still see some of those, but many of those have been damaged around town. And those are, I believe, the Pacific House Gardens. And bottom left, that's our current tiles around town. We do have new ones that we can make as they were doing street work in front of here, in front of Colton Hall and City Hall. We actually had new tiles built to do that by Marzi Sink Factory. They used to be located in Seaside. They're now up in Oregon, but we had new ones made. And then the bronze kind of gilded tiles, those are from 1993, bottom right. You'll find some of those around town. Next slide. So with that, we looked with 2 specific kind of paths to identify working with the consultant Page and Turnbull. And so we started looking at what are the themes that we wanted to look at. And I just want to highlight that because one of the things that we, when we were looking at this, it was looking at the underrepresented people here in Monterey and the different stories that could be told here with the path of history. There are 7 themes that kind of came out, which Indigenous sites and stories, Hispanic and Latino sites and stories, immigrant sites and stories, Black and African American sites and stories, architecture, military history, and local people of importance. One thing of importance to note in this is that you'll see on the site, There are very few indigenous sites identified, and that's because we cannot basically identify different like burial sites or anything, and we want to be very present and work with the tribes directly to identify current themes about it and how do we properly identify and tell the indigenous story out here. So those aren't specifically on different properties that are on here. And yeah, but that's the Pearl District. You'll see a map on there, but I'll just kind of try to float through this. The go next slide. And this is a list of the 13 sites in the Pearl District. A lot of these are of Japanese or Chinese interests of the time, and happy to go over any questions at a later time about this. The African American USO building is also the Filipino Hall now. French Consulate is not listed really. It's not on the walking path, but it used to be the start of the path because it was the founding of Monterey History and Art Association when it was, I believe, on Fremont and Abrego. And then they took down the building, moved it over there to a Camino El Estero, rebuilt it, put it together, and founded Monterey History and Art. So that used to be the start of the path of history when it was a driving path. And then it changed when it was a walking path. Over time, it got kind of knocked out. So still as the sign, it's still path of history, but not officially on that walking path that you'll note there. But all of these were gone through by our commission, Dennis Copeland, retired museums cultural arts manager, and other folks. So appreciate all the work on this. Next slide. The next one we looked at was the new Monterey Cannery Row. And one thing I know when we initially looked at the grant was highlighting 2 walks based out of Colton Hall, but I felt like that would really limit to a lot of Old Town and different sites in there, and getting into New Monterey leads to a lot more of different immigrant stories of different people that came in here to help kind of build Monterey to what it is today. So with that, this is a list of different slides in Wing Chong Building, Pacific Biological Laboratories, Monterey Canning Company. Next slide. There's still, I believe, 19 on this one. So Sea Pride Packing, home of Joan Kwok Mui. So there's a lot of different folks that were involved in these things, in these areas that were important to Monterey history over time. Mariposa Hall was actually, I believe, the hall where the Buffalo Soldiers used to hang out over as well. So there's a lot of different stories that can be told as we talk about this. Next slide. Those are the last one. Monterey Fishing and Canning, Aeneas Sardine Products, New Monterey Library, also known as Schultze Park now. Used to be up on Lane Street, and then they moved that down to Dickman, and then created later created the senior center and the recreation center there. All right, next slide. The Monterey Walking Tours, this is a project I've been working on with service learners, which is to geotag and photograph and create a little story of all of the different sites that we have, because adding those tiles or markers on different properties is it's a larger project. You know, as you I'm sure know, that like adding on signage like on different properties that are not ours is going to be quite a lot of work. So the thought is to add these. We created a path of history and a map of all of the current sites that are on our current path of history, our public art, the El Encinal Cemetery tour, and the walking tour of the different sites that we have too. So hopefully we can add these on next ones. All right, I think next slide, or that might be it. That's it. Any Levi, Fernanda, any questions?
Just one minor correction, Brian. The Green Mansion ends with an E.
Oh, some places I've seen it with an E and without an E.
Well, it's one of our Mills-Acts and we have it with an E.
Yeah, was it Harry Green?
I can,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, and they had the
Yes.
property actually across the street in front of the Schultze Park. They used to have a house right there too.
Right.
Yeah, so
Yeah, I'm
I've
quite
seen it in
familiar
some
with
places
it.
as green and then green with the E. So I'm gonna make sure to get that when we get it up there.
Yeah, Since 2011 is when,
Okay,
The
yeah,
Mills-Act
I'll make sure to
happened
put that
with them.
this on the files too.
thank you. Anyone else? Yes,
I was
Geraldine.
interested in the French consulate as a location for the meeting with Monterey History and Art. Never heard that. They always talk about.
I know.
the categories and-
Your mic.
Microphone, Geraldine, your
Mike. Oh, yeah, use your mic, yeah.
Oh, luckily, it's not a huge group. Could you hear out there in the audience? So I thought they met at Catamatories, which was at Casa Serrano, to form Monterey History and Art. So that was new to me that you have notes that the Monterey History and Art met at the French consulate. in
Yeah,
Farmington.
I mean, that's what I had read, and that's why it was of importance that they had
Yeah.
first met. So I don't know who it was on there. It might have been some of the ideas, but they wanted to save that building and they pushed it down.
Oh, it's great.
Yeah,
Love it.
and I worked there when it was the Visitors Center. I never heard that either. And I also belong to History and Art, as you know, so.
Well, I was saying,
News.
one of the things is I did a lot of the things for my Path of History. I went into the Mayo Hayes O'Donnell Library and go through a lot of their files.
Yeah.
And if you've gone in there, they have a lot of the original receipts from Payne Mahoney. They have a lot of the original documentation from Laura Bride Powers and everybody regarding the founding of the Path of History. So there was a lot of that I was kind of going through as well. But there's a lot of great information that's on there.
Excellent.
Yeah, I know. I thought that was interesting too.
Mhm.
And yes. Carol.
So I've got two things. One is, will the history of the path of history be included in some of your history information?
Documents.
Because it is kind of interesting.
Yeah, I think it is something we need to build on, like, build on like the website and spend more time and get more staff to work on that, getting more about the Path of History on our website, on the city website, because I see people that think it's California State Parks that does it. There's a lot of people that think because California State Parks leads the docent tours, the walking tours out of Customs House.
Mhm.
And because they do that, people think that they do the gold tiles. People think that they're the ones that created it. And I think there's just an awareness that needs to happen that we're the ones that worked on adding the gold tiles. We're the ones that kind of worked on that project initially. We work with people, other partners on there, but I think the city can do a better job of telling some of the stories. And I find like that's why I add William Rigel in there, because I find that name often gets forgotten. He has a very interesting story himself as well.
The whole history of it and how it started as a automobile tour. So
Yeah.
the signs were really high.
Yeah.
It doesn't work for walking. The other thing is, when we do Mills Act contracts, the people with the properties have to be available for tours once a year or whatever. And I've always thought we just have some charming houses out there in neighborhoods. I'm not sure I'd want people tramping through my neighborhood, but I live in Fisherman's Flat, so we're not historic. But there are some wonderful properties out there that have Mills Act. And I don't know if it would be appropriate. Some of them are on your list. The Watanabe House
Right.
is one that leaped out at me. And they all have histories and they're wonderful. So I don't know if that can be in October. We have History Month sometime, some years
Yeah.
not. So anyway, they're wonderful sites out there that nobody knows about
It's true.
except us.
Yeah. Yes, I went, as you probably recall, on this tour last August. Lengthy tour. It was great. I walked the whole thing and all the way back too. Are everything we saw that day, or those 2 days, I guess, Brian, are all of them going to remain in this expanded path of history, or has anything been removed?
So some of the facts and some of the information and like kind of just the path of how it's done has been changed.
Okay.
We don't have a plan right now to install the tiles or do anything like that. But one thing that came out afterwards is after we did those walks, because the people from Page and Turnbull did their research.
Right.
And then gave it to our subcommittee or ad hoc subcommittee from the Museums Commission, as well as Dennis Copeland, retired Museums and Cultural Arts Manager. And I said, can you go over the data that they provided? Because they had some incorrect
Yes.
information on.
Yes, I recall that.
And so we went back and fixed it and actually revised the document. So we revised the final report. And I think that this is like our starting document is what we interpret like it for the museums department, is that we want to start off with this, help it guide us to kind of like how we're going to do. Because some people might want to do those things where you're doing a theme tour. Are you doing a garden tour? Are you doing a history of Japanese immigration tour? Or what kind of tour do you want to do? Because you may not want to do 2 to 3 mile walk of every different site, but you might want to hit specific houses too.
Right. I don't know if Tim Thomas is on that committee, but you probably remember he did have numerous comments about some incorrect things at some of these sites.
Yes.
So I assume those are some of the things that the committee discussed and,
Yes. Yeah.
okay, great. Thank you.
Mhm.
Anybody else? Julie, anybody? No?
Good.
I thank you guys for your time.
Well,
Thank you for your
thank
service
you
to the
for
city.
coming. It is,
Appreciate you.
it is wonderful, I think, this subject. Okay, now let me get back. Levi, did you have anything else? You mentioned that we don't have anything for May 9th at this point. And you've done a staff update. Yeah, on the Mills Act, and Brian, of course, on the path of history. And I do just want to add a little personal side here. I'm working Whale Fest on Sunday, and I am attending that talk. I'm really looking forward to at the library on Saturday. I have made a reservation to attend that. So I'm looking forward to this weekend. Anyone else have
Say something?
anything? Yes.
Monterey Museum of Art had a really nice day last Saturday. They had all kinds of things going on. I didn't go to all of them, but I think it brought in a lot of people, and I helped at the House of Four Winds just to do some docing, and we had more people go through that. It wasn't quite like Christmas in the Adobes, but it was a nice way for people to experience some of the
Right.
places that are usually closed and enjoy a little trip through Monterey history. It was very, very nice.
Yeah, I was at Casa Serrano, and we had like 3 times the people we usually get. And if they didn't know about that block party, we were sending them down to it. So it was a good event. 2 years now they've done that. Anyone else have anything to add? Then I guess we will adjourn the meeting. Thank you all very much for attending.